Is God an afterthought in your life? Well, I know that there are two subjects that I probably should never talk about, and one of them is your spiritual beliefs, your religion, or politics. So, I'm not talking about politics today, but I did want to talk about this statement that I've named God as an afterthought. And how this all came about was, I've been working with people as a psychic reader and providing wisdom and insight and healing for people who come to see me. And often when I would look at their energy field in a certain way, and then it was like, what am I seeing here? And then I heard Spirit say, oh, that's the way their energy looks when they use God as an afterthought. That God or the divine isn't a part of their life unless they need something. unless And not just you need something, like, I've had my down on my knees moment. So that's really, what I'm talking about, because the first 35 years of my life, God was definitely an afterthought. And so does the word God trigger you because of old programming that God is a judgmental God, is a critical God, a blaming God, a shaming God, and critical and ready to cause havoc in your life because you did something bad? So don't mean to trigger you some more, but hear me out. Let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation about this. Because I see a lot of people these days. I mean, they definitely are leaving the church, or let's say leaving organized religion, and maybe throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So, and the reason why I find it of value to talk about this right now, because we are so rapidly shifting in our consciousness that we can only go so far without a relationship. We'll just say a relationship with a higher power. How about that? Okay. So again, I said I'd never had a relationship with God for 35 years until one day, I call it my down on my knees moment, that I went down on my knees and I prayed. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go along. In the past 30 years, I've attempted and I've really tried to use the word goddess and the divine, which I use a lot, creator, I use creator a lot, supreme wisdom, I might use, all knowing, the all knowing. But I always find myself coming back to that default mode of God. So if you don't mind, I'm probably going to use the word God throughout this whole talk, because that's the one, for some reason, it feels very comfortable for me. But I do have a couple of very, very dear friends who are very, very spiritual. And I asked them one day, if they use the word God, and they said, no, because it's too strongly connected to all those words that I told you, blaming and shaming and punishing. So let's see here. Let me just take a sip of water. Have you ever gone to give a talk and you're just fine? Everything's fine, but the minute you start talking, your mouth goes really dry? It doesn't happen to me all the time, but maybe it's because I'm talking about God. All right. Do you have a relationship with the God of your heart as an afterthought? Do you have a relationship with the divine higher power at all? So these are things I really want you to think about. But let me be very, very clear that when you can somehow find a way to have a relationship with the highest of high powers, it's a real game changer. And right now, we need these real game changers. So before I had my out-of-body experience, I would have not known how to pray. I had no idea how to pray. And I'm curious what your beliefs are around prayer or how you define prayer. But my relationship was definitely when I went to church when I was young on Easter and Christmas. Once in a while, we'd go to Sunday school if we were visiting friends that do that on Sundays. And we would sit in church and they would say, let's bow our heads. And then someone up in the front would read a prayer out of the Bible, or maybe they would just freely kind of say a really powerful prayer over the whole congregation. And we would follow along in those words. And that was my experience with prayer. So, and so many of you have heard this story, but really in a nutshell, I was a hospice nurse. My husband's sister was actively dying. We had 2 other deaths right after that within a 6-month period of time in our family. My kids were like preteens. I was working, as a nurse, a hospice nurse. He was a police officer. So we had high intensity jobs, but because I was a nurse, a lot of my family was really pulling at me and I wanted to be there. But, you shift that hat from nurse to, daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, friend. And it was stressful. And so it was my favorite aunt that had just phoned and said, I have to tell you, I have breast cancer and I have to have surgery and I'm going to start chemotherapy. So that was a breaking point for me. And that's what I call my down on my knees moment. So I went into my room and I got down on my knees and I was up against the bed. I had my elbows on the mattress and I was just like this. And I kind of looked up a little bit and I said, God, why do people have to die? And I just lost it. I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I don't think I did much more than that. I can honestly tell you in my mind, I was like, this is really dumb. This is really stupid. You don't even know what you're doing. Why are you even doing this? This is not going to help. It was those words in the back of my head. But I can tell you my heartfelt emotion really, really sent that prayer, up to the heavens. And within 3 days, I had an out-of-body experience. And then I heard the voice that I now know as God. I know this voice is God saying, you don't die. You release your body, but your spirit always lives on. And so I got an answer to my prayer. It worked. And I couldn't believe that it worked. So, so at the end, I'm going to teach you just a little technique on how I describe when I'm doing a reading for someone, if they pray on a regular basis or talk to God or the divine, the goddess, ascended masters. You can talk to them in the car. I can tell in your energy field when you pray a lot or when you don't pray at all. And let's keep going. Okay, so so let me there was a story that I wanted to share with you. So I was down on my knee, then the voice came. Oh, and by the way, I didn't tell anybody about it, because if you are hearing voices and you say you're talking to God, at that time 30 years ago, I could have gotten locked up in a mental hospital for that. So I didn't tell anybody. So I wanted to share a few little stories with you. So I wanted to let you know that even though I worked as a psychic and even though I was a nurse and I could see the human energy field, and I did get a really strong reputation, and kind of at the height of my doing one-on-one readings, I had a year-long waiting list. And so I really could teach people about their human energy field and get them inspired and get them excited. And so now I just do that with larger groups of people. But I did have people fly in and get a hotel, and I did have people who kind of snuck in to see me, that if anybody saw them coming in, um, you know, they might not be supported in that. And so I remember once, so I would have clients come in that were, they were part of the church, but they'd come in with sunglasses and hats, and they'd have the collar of their jacket up quite high, and they'd come in. And I'm like, wow, why are you wearing all this? And they said, well, because I just don't want anybody from my church to see me coming in here. And I said, why is that? And I remember they said they were having a lot of problems. I think they were having problems in their back. I think it was a real physical issue. And in the particular church that they went to, if the back pain wasn't going away, they what they told me was other people would blame them for not praying enough, not being holy enough, not being good enough. And so they came in, they had a healing treatment with me, and the back pain was gone, and and they left. And I didn't see them again after that. But it was really distressing for them to feel like maybe they weren't measuring up in God's eyes. Okay. I've had other high level church leaders who have come to see me, and they have signed up for an appointment under a different name. And they've come in the back door, and they have the baseball hat, and they have the sunglasses. And so they have come in as well. And why to see a psychic reader? Well, not necessarily. These spiritual leaders wanted to use every tool available to them to also keep themselves accountable. Maybe if I see something in the energy field, some imbalances happening, because it could help them to serve their spiritual community better. But they had to kind of sneak in. And I had many nuns, I've had many priests come in, and they're not afraid of being judged, so much by their peers as much as they are reluctant because they may be judged by you, or people in their congregation. So, let's see. So what did I say here? Why? Because high-level spiritual teachers love to learn and grow spiritually, and they will do whatever they do to explore different ways to be the best version of themselves. And they love to enhance their spiritual experiences to be better leaders. And then I said, do they practice what they preach? They totally practice what they preach. But they would be judged not by God, but by others in their own church. So, another story I have. So, my son, he was in his 20s, and he was going to college, and he was working a part-time job, and he had been working at this place at the mall, and somebody got really dizzy, and they started to fall off the ladder, and he caught them while their heart had stopped, and the person died right there in his arms. He had another friend had an accident and died right in my son's arms. And so there were several things like this that happened. So I know if this happened to you, you'd kind of get a little complex, wouldn't you? And he started to feel like maybe he was surrounded by death and by darkness. He started to think something was wrong with him because people would die around him. Well, so when I talked to him, I said, when you have concerns about this, you know that you can talk to Jesus. And he said, well, I don't believe in the structure of a church. And I said, well, I'm not talking about being a part of a church or being part of a structure, but I would just suggest that you talk to Jesus. So there was an event that happened, and he called me the next day. In this event, he was in these apartment buildings, right? He's going to college, and one of the apartments caught fire that's across the parking lot. And in that fire, so my son goes running down along with other people. They tried to save the man that lived there. They couldn't get to him, and he died. So now my son goes back to bed. He's laying there, and he said it felt like death was around him. And so he said, Mom, okay, I tried it. He said, I'm laying there, and I said, Jesus, if there's a Jesus, and Jesus, if you're out there, I need some help, because it just feels like there's a lot of darkness of death around me. And my son said, all of a sudden, like you can see the parking lot lights and maybe the bathroom light under the crack of the door. He said the whole room got so dark that all the light, there was absolutely no light in the room at all. And he said a few choice swear words. He was like, oh, blank, blank, blank. Like, I've just done it now, because it got really, really dark. And then he said it felt like there was this like this. And then he said it got so bright in the room, he felt like he needed to put sunglasses on. So I share that story with you because he had a Jesus experience. And he wasn't even sure that he believed in God. He wasn't even sure he believed in Jesus. He definitely wasn't a big fan of organized religion. So what did he learn that day? That Jesus, the love of Jesus, the compassion of Jesus, the light of Jesus is available to him whether he goes to church or not. So, and since then he's remembered that. So that was a pretty powerful experience. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to read all my notes. Okay, people feel the darkness around him. I had a man come up to me. So I used to do free meditations for the community, and for 8 years I did free healings for the community, so people could come in once a month for a healing. And I would do guided meditations in the evening. And this woman had come on a pretty regular basis, but this one particular night she brought her husband. And so after everybody was leaving, the meditation was done, he marches right up to me, and he's just like a foot away from my face. And he said, aren't you concerned that when you're teaching this meditation that you are causing people to open up those doors that they may not be able to close? And I said, well, what kind of doors are you talking about? And he said, like evil, like demons. And I said, well, honestly, if I'm being really honest, those doors were opened a long time ago. There's evil in the world and there's demons in the world, and they exist already, whether I teach meditation or not. And he was kind of surprised at that answer. And I said, but let me ask you a question. If someone said, I think I have some dark force connected to me, would it be all right if I sent them to your church? Would your church open the doors with open arms and accept them into the church and pray with them? And he said, probably not. And I said, well, I'm not a church, but someone could walk through my doors and they could say, I feel like I have darkness or a shadow around me, and I'm not sure what to do. And I would offer healing. And we have a huge community that would be able to offer healing. Now, I don't do that type of work anymore, working with a lot of dark energy. It exists, but that man learned a lot that day about his thoughts that meditation can open portals or open doors that you might not want to be opening. And am I trying to say that that can't happen? No, I'm not trying to say that. But when you're connected to God and you're connected to the God of your heart, the divine source, that light is going to supersede anything. Just like with my son who had that experience with Jesus. Yeah, it got dark, but the light completely washed out the darkness. Even though all the electrical lights were off in the room, it became as bright as the sun. So why do I share these stories with you? It's probably obvious, but I get to talk to a lot of you and hear from a lot of you that are really suffering and really struggling. And I am telling you, it works. Prayer works. And you don't have to follow any rules or regulations. All right. I've missed a story, 2 stories. All right, I can remember the story, but I can't find it. So there was another story where I had a friend, and he came to talk to me, and he said, "Nancy, I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "All right, what's up?" And he said, "Well, my sister called me, and she wanted to meet with me, and she met with me, and she said to me that something terrible, I've gotten myself addicted to heroin, and I don't know what to do, and I just felt like if I just reached out to my brother that maybe you can help me." He said, "I don't know how it happened. It just started off really slowly, and then next thing you know," and he goes, "But I have a real problem and I don't know what to do." And so this friend of mine said to him, "Well, you need to pray." Now, this was 30 years ago. So he says to him, he says to her, "You need to pray." And she said, "I don't know how to pray. Nobody ever taught me how to pray." And oh my God, that broke my heart. But I would have said the same thing before my down on my knees moment. And so he asked me if I knew how to help him pray. And this was long before, like, we had all these rehabs, and there was definitely a lot of judgment, and still is, around drug addiction. But he was able to call his sister and just ask your higher power for help. Just go out, hold your arms up, or go privately in your room, or write it in a journal, but just have that conversation with this imaginary God that you're not sure even exists, because that imaginary God that you don't even know or think exist, they don't get offended. They're going to say yes. The higher power is going to say yes. They're not going to say, "Well, yeah, but you stole that $10 out of your mom's purse yesterday." Yeah, but no, it doesn't work like that. It's you ask and boom, the light is there. The answer might not be there, but the light is there instantly. All right, I'm going to tell you one more story. And in this story, I was brought in to offer a group guided meditation to a large community of people. And the largest auditorium that was available happened to be in a church that was connected to an active convent. So the convent where nuns lived. And they wanted me to do a group reading, a group guided meditation and reading and healing. And I do those on the solstices and the equinoxes. So I'm standing up in front of the room, and it's a packed house, and it's big, it's a packed house. And all the nuns are sitting way in the back, the chairs that are leaned up against the wall in the back. So I'm already feeling a little wiggly about that, because, I never want to offend anybody. I don't want to offend any of you, by having this conversation that might be hard for you. All right, so I'm standing up in front of the room, and I'm about ready, to guide them through a meditation. And suddenly Mother Mary moves into the room, and she kind of floats and glides towards me. And she said, I want you to let everyone know that I'm here. And I'm here to support and offer healing for them tonight. And I said to her telepathically, as I'm trying to pretend like I'm normal, I can't do that. And she says, why not? And I'm like, well, because people, they're going to know I see things, and people, they probably won't believe me. And she said, it's really important. I need you to let people know that I'm here. And I said, but I can't do that because there's nuns sitting in the back of the room. And I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, or I don't want to do something wrong. And Mother Mary said, much more sternly with me, oh my God, she said, all right, Nancy, it's going to be really important that you tell everyone in this room that I am here. And then I want you to tell everyone in this room that there is not one church, one organized religion, no group in the entire world that owns me. And that's exactly what I said. And she said that no church, she is not Catholic, she is not owned by anybody. There's no church that owns her, no, I don't even know. Anyway, she said that, I said that, and the place erupted in roaring laughter, and even the nuns stood up and just started clapping, because they too really believed that Mother Mary is available to everyone, no matter what their spiritual beliefs. Now, I often will call in Mother Mary because she had a son that died. And she knows that motherly heart of loss. And so if you have ever had loss, you've lost a child who's died for any reason, or maybe you're struggling as a daughter or son with your own relationship with your own mother, or anything, you can call Mother Mary in for anything and ask for healing. And so why do I share this? Because we need to let go of any of this strictness that we have that disempowers us to have that high level relationship with our higher power. So please know that I wish to share this with you, but that your relationship with God, whether you believe in God or not, is your belief system. It's your relationship, and I in no way mean to interfere with that. It's your free will to believe. However, I do encourage you that if you wish to call upon one of the archangels, or call upon, of your culture, of your faith, to call in that help, to not do it as an afterthought. Don't do it when you've had a car accident and you're laying there and the ambulance isn't there yet. God, please help me. Don't wait till you are in your worst state to ask. You're going to get the help. But if you just have those little conversations every day, you can have that same loving, compassionate support every single day of your life. So, and praying for other people, I can see when there's a lot of prayers for people in their energy field. So let's say if somebody's gay and the whole church prays that you stop being gay, it blocks your spirit from coming into your body. So you may be well intended, but it can actually block your loved one's energy field. So if you can just say, I just ask for prayers of upliftment for my son or my daughter or my dad or my friend, and that they can use those prayers of upliftment in any way they choose. If it's open-ended that way, then it's not going to interfere with their own journey. So this little test I wanted to teach you at the end of my talk here, the end of my chat, is this is how I know if God is an afterthought. So I use the symbology of a rose, and I teach this symbology in all of my classes. But any of you, you can imagine that you are any type of flower, or you can imagine that you are just standing there. You can imagine an image of yourself. And then I interpret the sun. So I use the sun that's above this little image, a sun over the flower. So if the sun is directly over the flower, then that means you are aligned with your higher power, however you want to define them. If the sun is far off to the right or far off to the left, you may have a little bit of a strained or confusing, or maybe you're making it a little more complicated than it needs to be, your relationship with the higher power. Or if the sun is way in the past, it's like you used to have a relationship with God, but you left that relationship in the past. And in this current moment, you may not have that relationship. And of course, it can be in the sun as well, but I don't often see the sun in the future. But God is an afterthought. The sun doesn't even exist. So I'll look at flowers to see if the sun is radiating, illuminating with light. I'll look to see you, to see if you're being illuminated with light. But if there's no sun at all, that means that you live every day of your life and you don't even think about God. You don't even think about the divine. You don't even think about the goddess or the creator or the supreme wisdom. You just don't even think about it. You just think about, I've got to get to work, and I forgot to comb my hair, and I forgot to put on my makeup. It's like the sun doesn't even exist. So I'm going to invite you to bring the sun into your life so you can play with it. You can imagine it. You can see where the sun is in your life, and you can do that little test every single day. And I do. I look, because I may be a spiritual person, but I can forget. I can forget to talk to God. And then I have that afterthought. Oh, maybe I should have talked to God about this. All right, there you go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I would love to read your stories if you have any God moments, Jesus moments, Mary moments. I have moments with Shiva. I have moments with Buddha. I have moments with all kinds of Kuan Yin. And so it doesn't matter. You don't have to be Asian to have a relationship with Kuan Yin, for example. So let yourself play. Let yourself play with that relationship. Make it your own. And know the God that I've learned and grown with is not punishing. Like I said, you don't even have to get the words right. You can just cry and cry and cry, and you don't even have to talk. God knows your heart. So anyway, I could go on, and I did. Take care, everyone. Enjoy, and I'd love to read your stories. Bye-bye.